I can't believe, personally, my luck on having you 4 people on this couch, because it's like, let me start that again.
Any notes?
Oh, God.
I just don't believe it.
We did a thing where Kez had to do the classic snogging with the mocap camera on your face. How horrible was that?
It was definitely trial and error, I remember.
Yeah,
Was that
Like a first
and actually,
kiss.
how do I kiss? I can't even remember how to kiss anymore.
In theatre, obviously, you have to get a performance to last, but in games, you have to get what you want really quickly, and it has to be specific. But if you pull those together, you get really great performances, I guess.
Dad murder, T-pose, tragic death, T-pose, sex scene, T-pose.
There's a scene Ben has talked about where essentially his character goes and visits the grave of his father for the first time, having kind of been exiled from his country for a long time. I tried to convince him not to do it at one stage. Sorry, Square Enix. So we did shoot those scenes, and I had tears in my eyes the whole time.
Welcome to the Radio Fire podcast, where today we are talking to some of the amazing people behind your favourite performances in Final Fantasy XVI and some other great titles.
Yes, including Ollie and Morgan, who are the founders of the Schlock Localisation Company that deal with editing, copywriting, writing, directing, etc., as well as Hannah Price, a fantastic performance director, and the exceptional Martin Vaughan, who's casting director for Final Fantasy as well. Enjoy.
Enjoy, guys. I thought I'd start by just asking you guys quite simply, how long have you all known each other for? And that includes you, Kez. And how did you all meet?
Ooh. I don't know if we've all been in the room together at the same time.
Yeah, we
No, I
have.
don't think we have.
A BAFTA.
Yeah.
Surely we've been
Maybe.
at BAFTA. I think we've been at BAFTA.
Well, I guess I'm fortunate enough to have worked with everyone to differing degrees. And I feel like I've probably known Martin the longest. We were talking earlier, actually, about Alien Isolation Days, which was, I guess, 2012 maybe.
Yeah.
When you were outside, but weren't working directly, or were on the game, but in different
I
capacities.
was in production then before I moved into casting,
Moved into casting, that's right. And then, I'm not sure, me and Hannah worked on a game, but it was really brief, and I feel like, correct me
we've
if
done
I'm wrong.
more than one, maybe.
Maybe more than one.
Yeah.
But there was the one that I really remember, because you were brilliant, genuinely. You were
Thanks.
so brilliant, because I feel like it was a trailer, and I was playing a character called Jan, and I think they were doing a few different ones. This was at Side.
Right.
And there'd been a last minute change. Somebody was poorly, and you were brilliant, and you came in, and you just seemed to know everything. I was like, oh God, this is brilliant.
Oh, great. I'm very glad.
Empire versus something. Anyway, we can look that up.
I feel like also you were at RADA, weren't you?
I was, yes.
So were you there in like 2003, 4?
That's when I graduated, 2004.
So I think
gosh.
because I was on the MA course in the same type of time. So I feel like probably met you in the RADA bar.
Oh my God, we need to chat about
a
that.
billion years ago.
It's the sad thing
Right,
is that is a
okay.
long time ago. I can't really remember
Now we're
what
like
happened yesterday.
revealing.
Good, we've dropped RADA and BAFTA already.
RADA and BAFTA.
I think the biggest revelation is that RADA has its own bar. That's cool.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
know we
pretty
used
good
to
bar.
try and go
Yeah,
there
it is
because
pretty
it
cushy.
was near
Yeah.
Ulu where we used to go for the big. They used to do a lot of onion rings on a spike at
nice.
Ulu for quite
You
cheap,
thinking
but
of Hungry Horse?
but it wasn't very classy. And sometimes you try and sneak in the RADA bar because it had a bit more to it. Yeah.
With the onion rings?
You take your onion rings in, yeah.
Like barter to barter.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
What, you would go and do that in the RADA bar? Oh, right, okay. So what? Oh, gosh,
They wouldn't let you in.
We've all been in a room years ago.
Morgan, I've known since 2003, when we were testers together, and then Martin, I would have met you next in about 2006 or 7, and we would have been working on something together at Side, and then Hannah next. No, wait, Kez or Hannah next? Wait, no, about the same time, because we were doing the mocap for 16 in Hungary, and then I was coming back for auditions, and so we would have met about the same time.
Similar time.
Yeah.
I think we met, although I don't really remember. I think you maybe auditioned for a Dragon Quest game, like a long old time
I wouldn't
ago.
have known, would I? It was
Right,
Dragon
no,
Quest.
exactly. I
you know?
knew because I
Yeah,
was
of course,
working. Yeah, so and I think he didn't get the part, but I think that
can
would have
cut
been
that
like that
out.
would have been like the noughties, sometime in the noughties. I met.
Wow.
Yeah, it was in the. I think it was.
Okay.
Ollie, I met in 2003. We were video game testers for Square Enix. Martin, I met next when we've done our many things together at Side. And then Hannah, Finally, in 2019.
I'm the interloper, apparently.
John
The
come
newbie.
lately.
You're the
That's
glue.
right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. When did I meet you? That's probably, I don't know,
When you first
Side
started
10.
at Side, it would have been, God,
long time.
about 2011,
Yeah.
something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Because I remember, so FF16 was the project we worked on together. But I remember thinking that you were a new kid on the block back then.
No.
Was that not true at all?
No.
No,
I was
we'd
just an
worked on-
ignorant kid on the block myself. Yeah.
Is like Side the common denominator then from Origins?
Would it be?
I think
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much,
true.
yeah.
The Nexus.
So Hannah, you were obviously a big theatre and still are, but you started off in theatre as the director. I'm just now
I'm loving
figuring
the
it all
big.
out.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
Huge, massive. Yeah. I did start in theatre. I still do theatre. Just a show I had just closed actually. I do a lot of immersive now, but I have been doing games for a long time. And actually, I got into games because a sound designer that I'd worked with a lot in theatre did sound design for Fable. And one of their directors couldn't come in a particular day or something, and they asked me if I wanted to fill in. It wasn't quite as simple as that. I had to go and speak to people and come in. But that was the first thing I ever did was on Fable, which was
Wow.
a bit nuts.
Deep end.
And within about 3 months, I was literally directing Brian Blessed,
Wow.
which was also nuts and
He's
brilliant.
come up a few times.
He's come up a few times.
Listen.
We haven't had him on as a guest.
There we go.
He shows up surprisingly
Early days.
often as like
Early days, yeah.
as like
He
a
does,
character
yeah.
reference when you're doing your castings. There's a lot of like Brian Blessed, and then
It's-
we would
it's
ask
either
people
Hermione
like
Granger
Martin,
or-
and Martin would go, "It is possible to get Brian,
would
but
you
here are
like
some people who are a
Brian
bit less
Blessed?"
chaotic," and that happened a few times.
Chaotic good though, right?
Yeah.
Good
Oh,
guy,
of course,
yeah. D&D stuff.
Have you ever seen him do the game show where they lock you in the room and then your partner has to answer the questions about you?
No.
It was
but I
a
feel like
thing,
I need to, yeah.
ITV years ago. And Brian Blessed does it with his wife. And then he descends into an anecdote about climbing Mount Everest for charity. And
Oh,
one of the
he
guys
told me that
dying.
one.
And
Yeah.
then him just going like, and of course he's dead, like that. And it's like, it's just, he was quite and apparently
Yeah.
in the booth, you could tell us, loose cannon?
Yeah, a little bit of a loose cannon.
Brilliant cannon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely excellent. But yeah, a bit of a loose cannon, a couple of nose whistles and things, of course, and lots of hilarity.
Yeah.
He found that very funny. No, he was lovely. He was really lovely. And he just, me and my friends was for some reason obsessed with his "Who do you think you are?" at the time. And he's got
who
a
was he?
relative in that called Jabez. And I was like, oh, I don't know why, but on my Hindu, everyone was shouting Jabez. So I tried to get him to say, oh, could you tell me the name of your relatives and could you record it for me? So I sent it to my friends and he went, yes, Jabiz. And I was like, oh, no. Really? No. Yeah. But yeah, he was great. Amazing. In Fable, did lots of stuff about chickens.
Nice.
What he did?
Yeah, there was a bit of a storyline about kicking a chicken, I seem to remember. It was a long time ago.
Were you tempted to ask him to say Gordon's alive?
Yeah.
He must
Did
get
you?
it all the
No.
time.
So you get your professionalism, that's good. I would definitely have
You
to
get him
ask him.
saying Gordon's at the very start of the project,
at the
alive,
end,
somewhere
yeah.
in the middle. Somebody else
Yeah.
will catch it.
Smart.
Yeah.
And then stitch it together in post, very good.
So I find that really interesting that you were obviously doing lots of theatre and then they suddenly said, come in, do this game. How was that transition? Was it quite...
More similar than I think most people would think it is. Obviously, there's loads of technical stuff that over the years I've really learned working in games. But if you're just focused on getting a good performance, that's what you're focused on. So I didn't find it completely different. And actually, I think doing games makes you a better theatre director because you have to be so specific. Whereas when you're in theatre, obviously, you have to get a performance to last. But in games, you have to get what you want really quickly, and it has to be specific. But if you pull those together, you get really great performances, I guess. So hopefully that comes across when I'm directing theatre.
We talked about that with Michael Geary a little bit, didn't we? Because he's and talking about how, oh God, just asking all those questions super quick to make decisions is actually quite handy that you have to do with a theatre script.
I quite often use actions. So in theatre, people are really prescriptive about this, and they have to be a transitive verb and all the rest of it. But it is quite useful if there's people that have that kind of shorthand, and you can go, no, I want you to, punish me with that line or whatever. It's quite quick, and it makes people quite specific, quite fast, and that comes from theatre. So not that different, but yeah.
That was a thing in the early sessions we had together, which I was so it looked like magic to me because of I kind of come from the narrative end of things, and we're direct now, but like from a performance and narrative end, and so it was all about no, you have to understand this ring is the ultimate ring of power, you know, and the actor's like, okay, right, okay, and coming at it from trying to contextualize with a particular read in mind and all that stuff, and then watching you go, no, this line is a pull. And then the actor just giving that thing that I had been imagining when we'd written it, and I've just been, how do you do this magic? It was really like I was amazed.
But actually, I guess that is different because in games sometimes you don't need the context because you're just getting what you want, whereas or what everybody wants, or so sometimes the actor doesn't need loads and loads of context. If they know what they're playing, what they're feeling, that they can reach it without knowing loads of stuff. Whereas in theatre, sometimes that has to be there a bit more.
Although, feels like it depends sometimes on the actor, though.
Yeah, it does.
Some actors
definitely.
really they're like, right, you're this, it's this world, exactly this is happening, and other people are like, do it like your hair's on fire, bang, you know, and that's it.
Such a good point, actually. Analytical or emotional or physical or what's the...
And then that's part of the fun of it, right? It's figuring out how
and I'm
how different
definitely
people work.
Only talking about it when there's like a sticking point when you particularly need something particular, because the rest of the time, you know, it's way better when the actors think of their own thing and do all this stuff you're not expecting, and that's where the magic is, isn't it? When you're not like trying to get something specific and it all just happens. And for that, they do need context. But in those kind of little sticky moments, sometimes it's not that necessary.
So on Final Fantasy XVI then, I know Ben Starr has been quite open and public about, you know, what happened with his father, very tragic, and how that affected him and the way he loved the character of Clive and what it means to him. How do you work with an actor who's going through something in their personal life? Do you ask them to use it?
No. I think that's a massive overstep. That was something that we were kind of right in the eye of that, right? I don't know whether you were still involved at that point when
bits and bobs.
So there's a scene Ben has talked about where essentially his character goes and visits the grave of his father for the first time, having kind of been exiled from his country for a long time. And I'm like, we can't shoot this now. Like it's exploitative. But what I think Ben wanted at the time, forgive me if I'm putting words in his mouth, what I think he wanted was to work and to focus on the thing he was doing, the thing he loved and all that. So we did shoot those scenes, and I had tears in my eyes the whole time. Well, we absolutely were not going like, think about, you know, I'm because Ben is so in that, like the context, like that was a person where he can spend hundreds of hours in the studio with us, and so we would be able to say, this is this person's brother, this is the relationship, this is how long it's been since you saw this thing, all that stuff, and we can make it all about the story and about what's happening, and whatever he brings to it, that's not something we'd ever ask him to do.
And also we talked about it, right? We knew knew that scene was coming, and we were like, mate.
And I tried to convince him not to do it at one stage. Sorry, Square Enix. But like we became really close friends with Ben around then, so that was great that we could have those conversations around that, because I think if it had just been in the studio and it had been sprung on him, then I don't know.
And sometimes you do learn things. Like we've had people come in and then they'll do a slightly funny audition or a weird performance, or you have a weird moment and then you find out something personally's been going on with them afterwards, and it's like, oh, fuck, I'm so sorry. Like, because you can't know, and people like quite nicely are trying to leave that at the door and come in. And obviously Kez can speak to, like, you know, bringing life experience into, you know, acting and stuff, but like when you've inadvertently asked somebody to access something really painful, that's tricky. So I don't know if you remember when we were in Hungary, but there was a scene which later got cut in which, and I'm going to have to be very vague about this, where they were being asked to do something again involving violence against a family member, and then it was like, now we've got to go again. Now we've got to go again. Now we've got to go again. And he was getting more and more upset as we went, and that was just like, Jesus, like, I don't know but then checking in with him and I'm going, I'm fine. And you're like, you're not fine. But like, you know, everybody's trying to work towards the thing, but it genuinely borders on the like, I'm not sure we should be doing this.
You try not to be exploitative. I think that any time you ask an actor to go, you know, like, I don't know, I think personally, I think that's kind of wrong. I think you get them, they can get there however they want. And you know, and like we've talked about, you figure out what the actor needs to get them to whatever place, right? With Ben, we knew that we could just like say, this is your character, this is what's happening to him. you bring whatever you bring, and like definitely don't. We would never. I would never ask somebody to kind of bring that personal
vulnerabilities about giving them space.
Exactly. Like make them feel safe and let them do their thing.
I didn't know that about Ben. Didn't know about that. So that's wow. In drama school, there was a big thing about endowering we did, which is where we kind of bring in what we feel comfortable to bring in. But I remember, obviously, I was thinking back at all my different experiences with you guys, and from the directing side, because actually I've been directed by all three of you in different places, and I always remember. Can you believe that?
Who's best?
You can give 3 different answers. And we'll just cut around.
The Patreon subscribe.
But I do remember you all. I think there'd been something not too long ago, and I'd been thinking about this a bit more, about people always asking at the beginning of a session, how are you? And I feel like you guys all did that with me. And maybe it's because I'm an actor and it comes up in conversations sometimes about feeling vulnerable and all that kind of thing. So I'm always aware of the people who do and don't. Largely people do. But it's I think, especially in a voice booth, funnily enough, I find it's really nice.
But there's like that thing of like some sense of reading people, and also some people you just don't know as well, because you're very easy like to get along with anyway. We knew each other already, so that's just that bit easier. But sometimes someone will come in and they don't know you well enough yet, and they're not comfortable sharing anything like that. So you could ask, how's it going? And they'd be like, yeah, great, the bus was busy. But actually anything could be going on,
Good point. Yeah.
The video game industry, bits of it have not been as quality focused as I think we've been lucky enough to be a lot of the time. So sometimes an actor will come in and you'll go like, how are you doing? They'll go, yep, voice is fine. Because they're not expecting chat. They're expecting to be beaten into giving the performance or the particular line read that you want. I think I was a script supervisor in a lot of projects for a long time before I directed, and so just watching all of that thing as a kind of outside the director actor relationship, and just seeing these people uncomfortable on the other side of the glass, seeing them have to put up with lengthy silences where me and whoever talk about the script and the director goes, like that kind of stuff, as they just sort of very professionally sit there in silence. And I realised I didn't, when I was in control of those sessions, ever want that to be how they felt. Because I've been on the other side of the glass as well a little bit, giving a performance and then there being total silence for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Which feels like about 6 months, right?
Yeah, how does that feel?
All the way. And then they go, and at the end of it, that was great. And you go like, I don't think it was. I don't think you need to talk about
it. Is Toast of London.
Right. Yeah. But it's not. But
you can see them arguing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the worst version of it is something that happened recently where you spend 3 minutes giving a really involved blah, 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 let's do this. And then you realise Talkback was off and the actor's literally in there checking their phone going, I guess they're talking about whatever. And,
It does seem to be one of those things, Talkback thing, which I don't know, it will just happen, won't it? It doesn't matter how long you've done it.
We've been talking about this recently. I don't know how you feel about it, Hannah, but just you just should have it on all the time by default and only have an emergency shut off button.
On the client.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, definitely sometimes you don't want that.
Yeah. It can be a godsend, I guess, can't it?
And also, if you're doing something super technical, I don't know, particular line lengths or something on a localization, stuff like that, they just don't need to hear all that, I don't think.
But maybe, again, really, it's a little bit of his, performer to performer as well. Because some people, I can think of a couple of people who are happily okay, they're having a chat, go on their phone for a bit, snap back in, nail it. And there's other people who need to be kept, on board. So.
I do think, though, what we're all saying is you should explain.
Yeah.
We're just going to have a quick chat about, line length.
Of course.
Whoop. Yeah. They always get left on or off at the wrong points.
Yeah.
It's just...
Bad buttons. You know what? Even in the best studios, bad talkback buttons is a real phenomenon. I've 20 years I've been doing it. The amount of directors go... just hammering away at something, and it
should be a big novelty button.
I had a big foot pedal thing, and it was great.
Foot pedal.
Oh, wow.
That was so then you can do. You can be gesturing away.
And I went to I can't remember where the studio was, but they had a sewing machine, that big thing you stand on for the sewing machine. Where you could and then you definitely know it's on or off because your foot's on the big F off button,
like a sort of loom kind of thing. Yeah.
And you can feel you're really cranking out those lines. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Up in the market there.
Piecework.
Yeah,
I get it. Nice.
So Martin, when it comes to casting, is it a consideration for you like personality clashes or anything like what the guys are talking about around some actors don't want to have like the back and forth or they're not comfortable with it? Is that a consideration, or are you only focusing on the character and the story?
I think it's a bit of both, really, because obviously you only build up that knowledge from actually getting that feedback from directors like Hannah and Ollie and Morgan. So I think a lot of the time I'm just focused purely on what the character is and trying to find people that fit that. And obviously, if there are other considerations of whether know that a certain actor likes to be directed in this way or might not be the best fit for that kind of direction that I know the project's going to have, then obviously that'll factor in. But yeah, I think it's just knowledge that you build up over time that you try and pack in when you're actually looking for people as well.
You can also brief us, right? That's the point is you can say this actor is, they're doing this for this reason.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Also, Martin's massively doing his encyclopedic knowledge down.
Right.
No, really.
The mental Rolodex. Yeah.
With casting directors, you can just come and go. You're just in the room every now and again, aren't you? And you come and go and sit
Largely,
in.
yeah.
Because I went in the one the other day and it was a good session. It was good fun. And I came in and this lovely lady had been in there. I was like, hello.
Yeah.
You've been in there the whole time. It's quite clever because you don't know. You can really see what people are like and how they are, because we never know you're there really. Apart from some when you can see everybody, but a lot of the ones I go in, it's quite nice. You have the opportunity to really see what people are really like.
Yeah, and it is going to sound creepy, but that's one of the things I like about the job, in that you can just kind of go in and like make yourself invisible and just watch without people knowing that you're there sometimes. And
I guess that's really important.
But then there's the really scary version, which is we've had things recently where somebody's been dialed into a Zoom call the whole time and nobody told you.
Yeah.
You've done 2 hours and you go back and you go, did I say a career-endingly bad? Like, it's all like that's a bit frightening. Obviously, if Martin's shuffled in with a cup of tea, that's fine. But if somebody's been there with the screen off the whole time and you just don't know, that's frightening.
That's the other part. Like, when I have been really busy, I have had like one headphone in sometimes where there's been auditions going on in a studio while I've been working, and I've kind of been focused on 2 things at once. But it is really interesting sometimes to hear what's going on direction-wise.
What you were saying about the, did I say something career-endingly bad? Do you remember a couple of years ago where someone did a Zoom audition and the casting director was like, "Oh, look at his terrible apartment. It's what people have to live in this state."
That was
Lucas Gage. It was,
right.
It's awful.
Which, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah.
in the end. But yeah.
I do think with auditions though, especially if they're on Zoom, well, any time, half the point of the director is to make them feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also quite often you don't know what the client actually wants unless they're there with you. So a lot of it is about getting a lot of different versions to best demonstrate that actor can do lots of different things so that they're not kind of missing an opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is a strange way of auditioning. It's not the same as for other formats. No. It is different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very strange. I'm doing a project at the moment where I'm doing a fair amount of Zoom auditions, and it is, like you say, you're just trying to get every possible version of it. Even when you're saying to the actor, like, right, this feels like it's completely opposite to what the character would do, but could you maybe try it like this?
And then you have the localized project version of it, where a Japanese character profile will say, he's 17 years old and his blood type is O and his favourite food is bananas. And you're like, great, what does that sound like? And then you have to try and do that thing where either you've got the client with you, like you said, and you can kind of do a couple of things and see if it's getting close to what they want. Or other times you just have to try and run as wide a gamut as possible to see if it's in there somewhere. Because weirdly, blood type just has never factored in.
I mean, I feel like I could write a book about the most unhelpful casting information I've been given over the years.
That kind of thing, right? Like this, the incredible marron glacé is the way into the character. That's what they like.
Some super specific stuff or references that kind of, I have to really work hard to find a through line into what links them. I remember being given one character once that had the character references of Rebel Wilson, Kanye West, and Cristiano Ronaldo. It's proper scratching my head to think,
who got the job?
Was it a schizophrenic character?
It's like, how am I going to find one person that encapsulates all of that? So,
and also then we've been doing a thing recently where they're recording the Japanese and you try not to refer to it too much, but character age, 17, my God, can that mean a lot? It can,
just as 42 can mean about 23, but 17 can mean about 28 or 12. It's absolutely.
Or the ones where they don't tell you anything. nothing.
This is
Well,
what we've heard from most people, most actors that we've spoken to, so that they get very little information, often because it's under embargo or it's not decided yet.
But also I think there's an element of not wanting to kind of put an idea into an actor's head when they come into the room, because it can sometimes lead them, I mean, crikey, can you imagine with the Rebel and Kanye?
A little bit more Cristiano? Okay, 25%. Turn that down, up with the Rebel a little bit.
Yeah, the poor actor reading that wouldn't have known where to pitch it. So I think sometimes it's good to actually remove references like that and just let
because then
the
they could
give
be
their
way
own
too
thing.
broad out the other end, right? There was a cursed period where it was like Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
And that was just it. That was the reference.
All the children characters are Harry Potter, and all the adult characters Game of Thrones.
Do you remember the Lord of the Rings years?
Oh yeah, no, it's.
So would you come in that instance and kind of go, what about if we, and offer better examples to flesh it out?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what the job is, really, of trying to get into the client's head and figure out what exactly it is that they want. And sometimes that means finding out exactly what they don't want and starting from there. It's a lot of mind reading, and it's a lot of kind of reading between the lines and getting them to kind of express what's been bubbling away in their heads for a long time. And now it has to be a person in the room, like, giving that performance. So it can be sometimes a little bit difficult to extract that information.
And would you, because obviously we always talk about how these games are being made way before, especially the actors come on board. For a casting director, does that vary? Could you be at the beginning, or could...
It varies with every project. With FF, it was very early in the process that casting started. So it was, once you'd got all the character bios together, it was just kind of going over all of that and looking. But sometimes it's, sometimes games, the last thing they think about is the VO. So you can be brought on really late in the process when they suddenly realise, oh yeah, people need to say things here. So they've had placeholders for all that time.
So we were video game testers, me and Ollie, that's when we met. And through various means worked on lots of different scripts, from having been like linguistic games testers, and eventually became directors. Throughout all of that, forming relationships with Martin over the years and being able to then, we would get to the point with projects where I would give you a phone and go like, this is a bit difficult, this is a bit tricky, there's a bit the politics around this and whatever, and we would be able to discuss that with each other.
But also, don't think for a second that Martin is not there going, oh God, this is an Ollie and Morgan job.
No.
So I'm going to have to think about it.
It's going to be in my business.
Yeah.
They're saying they want this, but really, I think they want this.
Yeah. But like that communication at all stages thing, like the trying to involve the actor, it's the same thing. It's about like trying to not lose anything in translation throughout, essentially, I think.
And sometimes it can be something quite simple that unlocks it, whereas like it's a scene in a series or something, or a character or a moment or something like that once you've kind of put that forward. And I guess it's like that with direction as well, where you just, something can just kind of click into place as to how it needs to be.
For the lay people, including myself, I'm like making out to be someone else, but I'm just, so localization, director and cast and director in a game. Obviously cast and director, main casting, but how does it work in terms of this decision making? Does that vary again project to project in terms of casting?
Well,
I mean, it's a bit of everything, isn't it?
I mean, as a performance director, I don't get the final say. I get a lot of input, depending on projects. Some projects, none. But a lot of projects I do because I'm lucky enough to work with kind of longer form narrative kind of things. Because those characters are so key, if I'm on it quite often, I get involved. But I definitely don't get the kind of sign off that goes up to the dev team and all through all kinds of mysterious channels and comes back. Like one I was just on, they actually went and tested some of the lines from that character with some people and then came back. And so that's been taking ages. And then another project I'm doing, it's a Remedy project, so they're kind of renowned, I guess, for having excellent casting, and they're developing some of the character and writing around the casting, so it's like a hand-in-hand process. So there's me and the narrative team and the actors, and we do workshops, and it's much more kind of, I guess, theatrical in that way. Hand in hand.
You did a lot of work on Alan Wake II, didn't you?
Yeah.
Is there anything you can tell us about the production process of that? Any behind-the-scenes anecdotes that won't get you in a lawsuit?
I would be shocked if anyone from Remedy did a lawsuit against anybody, because honestly, they are lovely. Like, Sam is one of the nicest people on the planet, and he wouldn't mind me saying at all, but he's hilarious. He'll just come in and you don't know what's happening in the game. Because when I first started working on it, it was a bit like hand in glove. They were still working it out. And I remember him explaining it to me and going, then there's going to be a musical, and then there's going to be like a bus, and then they're going to be playing on the bus. And I was like, what? Okay, that sounds mad, but cool, great. Yeah, so it's a lot like that. They're very excuse me.
Fun.
Yeah.
His dance, was it the VGAs? His dance was incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that, but I was a big fan of the original game. I'm yet to play Alan Wake 2, but it's on the list.
Oh, I hope I just didn't spoil it for you.
No.
Uh-oh, there's no bus.
No musical.
No musical. That doesn't
music.
happen. I've seen
At
clips.
all, none.
I wanted to ask you guys a little bit more about Final Fantasy XVI. So that's one of the main reasons that brings you all together. So, Morgan, you said that you started out as a game tester with Ollie at Square Enix. What's it like, just in general, like going from being a game tester to what you're doing now and having the script experience?
It's an interesting route that we were both lucky enough to join the industry at a time when that existed. Essentially, the runner kind of job and other bits of like television and movies and that stuff. That's kind of games tester in our industry. So with Square Enix, there was this beautiful period where lots of kind of people doing studying in London from different parts of the world, doing whatever they're doing. They might be doing marketing degrees, they might be doing whatever they're doing. And they would then get this as a sort of second, like a job to be doing while they're studying. And they would get that job because they were passionate about games. They happened to love Final Fantasy or whatever. That was my story, definitely. And then they would bring whatever talents they'd get their degree or whatever, and that would like lend them to different bits of the business. In my case, I just finished an English literature degree and kind of thought, summer job, cool. I like FF8. I played FF9 as well by that time. In fact, FF10 came out on the final exam day at university.
10, the one with the ball game in the big sphere.
I just forgot.
Blitzball.
My God.
I spent a whole summer.
That's all I remember about it.
I was assigned to just playing Blitzball
I quit
all
the game
summer
when I didn't get the
Nearly killed me.
jet shot for Tidus. So I was
that was
in Umbridge. So I kind of got the job there, and Ollie very helpfully left around that time,
Thanks,
thereby
Ollie.
vacating
Very
the seat,
old.
which became mine. And just after that, Dragon Quest VIII was going to be the first game in the Dragon Quest series, where essentially it had been Dragon Warrior around the rest of the world because somebody had the copyright to Dragon Quest, like a kind of board game person. Square Enix got back the rights to the Dragon Quest title, and they said, we need we're going to do British English for Dragon Quest. And I happened to be in the seat at that moment. And so I became the script editor on Dragon Quest VIII. And that just led to the rest of the career. But it was just that being on the premises, kind of knowing what was going on around, just like being a runner, just like Kate Winslet was a runner, I think. Like there was just that there were people who've just
So you're the Kate Winslet.
I am
Square Enix.
basically
That's
the
what
Kate
he's doing,
Winslet.
I like that you
yeah. I wanted to leave that as a subtext, but now
sure.
it's
Use your
text.
link.
That's the,
Yeah.
well, that's the title of the episode.
I was going to
so,
say, yeah.
But no,
Who's my
we were talking recently about how, so that path up through and it
Billy
used to be
Zane.
really good. So there's a bunch of people. I started in 1999. I'd been cleaning, this is good, I've been cleaning toilets at the Ginster's Pasty Factory.
Nice.
Then I moved to London to do my Japanese degree.
It's like a hell of a job.
on the notice board and it had the Squaresoft logo, which came up at the start of FF7. I was like, what? That. And then I looked and it was like this thing where they were looking for testers. So I went down to this place. I met this guy, Ed, who was the boss at the time. He took me for a cup of coffee and we smoked 3 cigarettes and spoke about obscure techno records that I didn't really know what they were. And then 2 days later, I got an email saying you've got the job, and that's literally how my career in video games started. And like, it's so stupid and so like round the houses and all of that stuff. But it also means that nowadays you have to do all of that like self-promotion stuff. You have to be big on LinkedIn. You have to like talk to, like I couldn't do any of that. I basically came up through smoking cigarettes and being in the pub in the right time, which is no longer, and quite rightly, no longer a viable career
But the
path.
phenomenon of like, I really want to get into, it is so much more about self-promotion now rather than just opportunistically kind of
If
being
it
in
was
the
up to, if I had to do the self-promotion version, I'd still be
Just
up.
wouldn't
I'd still be up Ginsters.
Ginsters, back to Ginsters.
I'd probably be like, if you got far enough along, they'd let you need these big tubes of dough together.
I thought you were going to spit.
It's a big sausage of dough.
Which Final Fantasy are we in now?
And if you're top man on the production line, they let you be the one who needs the sausages of dough
sounds satisfying.
because if you mess it up, the whole factory stops. So you've got to be good.
Wow.
Ricky.
But I was cleaning the toilet.
That would be a video game, wouldn't it? Like a puzzle game.
I don't want to work with
Literally
kids
how the
on that
sausage
licensed
is made.
product.
You will be traumatic.
Well, you've just killed our chances of a brand tie-in. So
Eat buffet bars; they are actually quite good.
no, it's okay. So working on a Japanese title, especially like part of like a beloved franchise, what are the main considerations? Is it different to working on like a Western title?
I think that's a better question for Hannah, to be honest, because we come up through the guts of it, whereas you came in from the outside, right?
Yeah, I mean, is it different?
Well, it was quite interesting that the English was getting done first on this one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was kind of a first,
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, obviously, there was like a pressure because it was such a sort of, so beloved as a franchise, but not really. It was lovely because it was very, these guys were very, very performance focused. And that isn't always the case. Trying to be polite.
Just look at her IMDb, which project she's talking about.
Probably wouldn't be on there. So no, not really. Sometimes I've done other games for a lot of Japanese games, and sometimes there are quite specific cultural differences, particularly around like how much voice you're using, like projection levels, kind of male and female voices again can be sort of the expectations of them are quite different across the cultures. So there can be that, but in this it was just because it's a sort of, it's a fantasy, just in case anyone didn't know. The world was so complete, you've got that. It was just about making sure that people were excellent in it and the performances were really true to the world. That was it, really.
Also, I think one of the things that Morgan and Koji would have been trying to do is get into, hi Koji, get the scripts in the room, because this is the thing we're always thinking about, right, is this script has to end up in the hands of an actor. And I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of a script and you look at it and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so
every single script I've ever heard.
Okay, great. So then that's the last thing we want, right? Is because then that's the shit for all of us, because we're in there and we're just trying to dig through the mush of what it's supposed to say, right? So then the idea, especially with how much you lot went over it, was to have a script go in the room that is you can give to an actor and they can actually perform it rather than having to like figure out on the fly what exactly it's supposed to. All of that stuff.
Do you know? I think Square Enix. Obviously, like we kind of come from Square Enix, so I feel a bit team Square Enix. But I think that they, as compared to some other developers, have put a lot of effort into getting Western performances in their games right. Like historically, the idea that it would have still been historically the case that somebody who didn't necessarily speak English listens to a Western actor's voice and goes, doesn't sound like the voice I imagined. When we'd be like, but it absolutely encapsulates everything that this character is in the English kind of thing. FF16 is a brilliant example of where, all of the casting suggestions we made ultimately, when we said, like, we love this actor, please, I don't think the creative team in Japan vetoed anyone, as far as I remember. Like, they might have gone, no, it needs to be a little bit more this, but then we'd bring that actor back in and go, okay, a little bit more like this, and then we'd workshop it a little. But they wanted it to be absolutely authentically Western, right?
I think that's the way it should always be. But we got given I guess the team got given a bit more license on that to try and really push for that. Because the thing that I hate, personal bugbear, having worked on a lot of Japanese to English translation as well, is when people go, what do you expect? It was foreign in the first place. Any kind of like excuse making because it was originally Japanese. I'm like, no, it's still got to work. You still got to be able to turn that into lines that you give an actor. Still got to be convincing. We still got to know who they are. We still got to know what's going on. You can't just go, it's Japanese. That's not allowed.
I've seen some discussion online about the difference between the Japanese dialogue in Final Fantasy XVI and the English. There was like some complaints, some people like explaining why.
Complaints on the internet?
I know, apparently there's lies on the internet as well, but I haven't encountered any.
It must have been an update. I haven't read it.
But it was saying like how, English, and correct me if I'm wrong, but English is a language that lives in the subtext. So you don't say something literal, but Japanese is relatively literal. Is it that cut and dry?
I'm going to say something which is going to make me very unpopular. First thing I will say is, like, translation is not that word means that, make it that word in English, right? So any sentence can be translated 50 different ways, depending on context, depending on character, depending on history, depending on the world that the thing is happening in, depending on what the person seeing the thing knows already, what they don't know, if you're foreshadowing a million different things, right? So there's no such thing as a correct translation of any given line. But then there's also this thing of, like, I have to say, quite often it's just that the style of writing, the way that things are written is very expository. And what you can do in English is not explain. So there's a series we've been working, you can do that less. You can accept that something is in the room already and not have to mention it again. So we were working on something recently which has a very, very heavily developed, like, fantasy universe with a lot of specialist terms. And what they tended to do in the old version of the English script of this is go, so then the neutron particles interact with the thingy, which does the thingy, and every time it got mentioned, they're saying it again and again and again. And you're like, no, we established that. We can move on. We can maybe have these people talk more like humans having a conversation. So I think there's maybe a tendency more towards explaining things again, just in case you'd forgotten, which we don't always need to follow.
That makes sense.
Which is different from being, I don't think, like, there's no excuses for, like, the writing not being up to scratch, and there's no excuses for all of those other things. It's just there are different kind of standards, same as there are different standards of performance, right? So what we found with mocap sometimes is Japanese physical performance is very stylized, so people are moving in a different way. You know, there are these different standards which exist, which it gets really interesting when we're in Hungary recording one version of a character moving that way, and then that same character, they've recorded some of the motion for that in Japan, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna have to make those two.
Koji Fox, who is the localization director, I think is that right? On FF16, worked on the script with us, worked on everything with us. He talked about attending those mocap sessions in Tokyo and be like, don't nod, stop nodding, put your hands down, don't nod. You nodded again. Okay, you did put your hands down, but you know, that kind of thing. And it's because it's stylized, right? I think linguistic stuff, as I understand it, I'm not by any means Japanese expert, though I do work on a lot of Japanese games. The thing I bring to all of those processes is an ignorance of Japanese, so that I can get a script and go, what? You know, and then I goes, oh yeah, right. That made sense. But when you still got the sort of Japanese in the air, then a lot of English kind of, you know, gets a bit unmoored. And so that's the thing I bring to that. But as I understand it, like, first of all, English has pronouns all over the place. So we would, like, using people's names frequently. Yeah. I remember, you know, when you watch Akira, like, one of my first anime memories of people going, Tetsuo, Kaneda, Tetsuo, Kaneda. I'm like, that's like 70% of the script is just names. You know?
You still get scripts which are full of that, and then you have to find ways to
what do you say instead of their name? What is their name doing? Like, so in a lot of Japanese scripts, name ellipsis will be like just
the other thing, the ultimate mysterious Japanese line. It's 3 ellipses in a row. That's it. That's all you got in the script. Go on, Mr. Actor. See what you can do with that.
That's when you want, like, so that's what, because, like, the thing
Ben was good at them, though.
You really all that stuff. But one of the things that, again, we're trying to stamp out is that when the actor's gently phase out through positive reinforcement is when the actor gets given a script prior to the session, and it's just their lines. And that's if they get given a script at all, right? So that was already a revolution because of the levels of secrecy involved, but, like, just their lines. So then you get a little ellipsis in there, you know, like that. Oh, that's a response to something. You'll find out on the day, all that kind of thing. Yeah. We've got to be better as an industry, essentially. Just secrecy, like every other creative media thing, doesn't have this level of ludicrous secrecy, and I think we can improve. And so scripters get the scripts with cue lines at the very least, as well as the actors' lines themselves. I think that's the thing we should be doing.
That'd be great. Just because the voice acting, I do think, was brilliant in Final Fantasy XVI, and because I came at it from the performance capture, motion capture side, because I've done a fair bit of that, when the actors have done a really great job with their lines, because then you have to do the physical performance to it. It was so easy with those guys when we had their lines back. It was really fun to kind of figure out where we were going to sit. They'd put exertions in, and the emotion.
You had the easy job, right? Because when it's the other way, and we've recorded some motions, and then everybody's got to do the lines to that in the studio,
which is what we were.
Which is sorry. There was some really interesting ADR sessions
there?
where we were having to
about
like
this.
do voiceover some
I
of the stuff
remember
we've done,
Ben
particularly
going
UK,
nuts a few
particularly.
times, just being like, "This is not a choice I would have made," you know. But being very professional and lovable, but making that stuff work, finding
And everybody made it work brilliantly.
But there's a puzzle element to it all.
Yeah.
Like when 3 different actors have been the motion performance, and then another actor comes in, and it's like trying to, what's the through line between that way of walking and that way of walking, and like you know, one of them like looks like a star quarterback, and the other one looks like a, you know, you just and intuitively you just watch those scenes. We would watch like Lego colored versions of these scenes with like early versions, and kind of go, why would he ever do that?
Right, yeah.
You know, and then you have to
Some of the major scenes, we were like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Then so we just rewriting the script and then going, okay, well then maybe we need to put something in this moment to just give him a reason to go like this, and and stick his hand in the air.
And reflect that in the voice and in the emotes and in everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is fascinating, because I've always been, if I've ever taught any of it or, you know, talk about it quite a bit, take it as seriously as any other kind of acting, please. The motion capture for this, well, for lots of reasons, but for this reason especially, the fact that this is going to be eventually with an actor in a booth.
I think you guys did an amazing job. By the way, because I came from the voice and I wasn't in Hungary, I wasn't, but like some of those scenes were just, I would watch those rushes and just be like, wow. How brilliant.
And that's kind of the most magical thing somebody can do, is be in that room in that stupid suit and then give like a heartbreaking performance.
Yeah.
Like you've got a big grey space, you got your funny black tight suit on with your bobbles all over you, and you like there's a speech from Death Stranding which I remember us seeing the rushes of. I don't know, we'll figure out afterwards if we're allowed to even talk about this, but where the guy, is it Die Hard Man, does that speech, and it's like a long speech and it's super emotional, and I remember seeing the rushes of him doing that scene in the mocap suit and being
in tears.
How did you it's insane.
I remember the Last of Us. Like I used to watch all the behind the scenes clips of that, and they have like really heartbreaking scenes, and then it's like,
T-pose, dad murder, T-pose, tragic death, T-pose, sex scene, T-pose. Like it really does add something.
For that shoot especially, because it was quite nice. We got to come, didn't we, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, or whatever, however it worked. Digik were amazing, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I know you're sitting next to me, but Ollie was the reason that we all kind of got to whatever level we got to with that. It was brilliant. And talking about the Japanese thing as well with the translation, and we kind of had the gods around us, didn't we, watching, and then there'd be the conversations with, can I just shout out, Aki and Shu, who gave me this lovely T-shirt, which I'm wearing today.
That's Ikegami-san and Kawashima-san. Hi, guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
They were brilliant as well. And it was you three, basically, wasn't it? A new translation.
Yeah, so I got brought out to interpret for them and work with them to be the thing between you guys, and then have you guys script, and then have Morgan and Koji. Basically, we had to be word perfect, which was insane. We had to be word perfect to the script. You could take a whole 3-minute scene. If somebody had got 2 words wrong, we had to go again.
Bennett.
And like sometimes that was like crazy emotional stuff again, like that type of stuff. And everybody, like Kez, you, Brian, Neil, everybody from day one was just like so up for doing that. And like, because you never know what actors are going to be like, I was like, somebody's going to have showed up in Hungary and discovered that this is what's expected of them, and quite rightly not want to play ball, you know? Because you're asking somebody to do like a 3 or 4 minute scene, be word perfect on the script, remember all the direction they've taken, which is coming through me from another language, with Japan watching on some weird telly over there that you can't see. You only find out afterwards when they're saying to you what they want, or it's like the constraints were insane. And like the fact that you lot worked through that and we all stayed friends is quite frankly amazing.
Well, we had the scripts to learn, which was great. So that was a gift. So that was great for us to have that. But the fact that the Japanese does there's a lot more words. Am I correct? So the translation and the talking went on for longer, which was a blessing because we actually got to rehearse. So that was all going on, and then we had time actually in those moments when you were taking it all in and putting it back through to us, and then going to what Hannah said earlier about then. Just the way you were able to tell us what to do was so succinct, so clear. And I think you'd kind of introduce yourself very modestly as I'm just here to interpret, maybe. You probably didn't say it quite like that. No, but you were very much the director.
Toilet cleaner, I said I was important.
Anyway, I've said my piece.
Right, I'm going to ask a question which any one of you who's brave enough to answer Martin, maybe it's your turn.
Wait,
I
what
want
is
you
it?
to describe to someone who's never played Final Fantasy XVI.
Oh, gosh.
What is it and what's it about?
I am the worst. I
It's
think
a fever
Morgan
dream.
should take this one. Because answering that in Morgan's presence,
That'll be funny.
Are we timing him?
No. I would
Camera on me, just to
feel-
watch my.
Yeah, exactly. Go on, Morgan.
Okay, what is it? Well, the creators of Final Fantasy XVI did state, I believe, that they had been inspired by Game of Thrones. That was the one casting direction you had for however many, when the series was big. So essentially, they set out to make a Western flavored fantasy with all of the familiar Final Fantasy elements. So hang on, am I coming at what's Final Fantasy as well, or just what is Final Fantasy 16?
Specifically
with
16.
a knowledge of what Final Fantasy is already, or like stone cold
You
start.
can add a bit of
Well,
flavour
Final
to it.
Fantasy is this brilliant, always different kind of remingling of recurring elements. So there'll be like references to Western culture and Eastern culture, and they'll all this incredible kind of melange. The same character names will turn up. So each time you experience these stories, which are set in completely different worlds with completely different casts and completely different concepts, you'll go, oh, this time that guy's a goodie, or this time that guy's a horse, and that kind of stuff. And so there's this strange mixture of nostalgia and novelty that you get with each one of these. It is called Final Fantasy, so there's almost always a fantasy element in it, but some of the games are more sci-fi skewed and some are more pure fantasy skewed. So FF16 is a very much a kind of dark fantasy game with kind of Game of Thrones style stakes and kind of duplicity and bloodiness. And swearing. That was lovely. I did like a bit of
Incest?
swearing.
Was there any
I
incest?
don't remember.
There were sex scenes, that's for
There
sure.
were definitely
Yeah.
sex
Sex
scenes.
scenes.
Yeah.
There might have been some
yeah, there
clippings.
were,
I'm
weren't
not-
there? Yes.
Okay.
Annabella.
But it's a dark fantasy. It's
Bit
an
incesty.
it's an action game, but it's an action RPG. So people who enjoy kind of acrobatic kind of combat and immediacy would enjoy FF16 as well, I think. But really, at its core, it has excellent performances. So there's a lot of heartbreak and laughter and
Laughter?
Yeah, there's a bit of laughter. There's
There
totally
is some
laughter.
laughter. You're right.
A lot of stuff about family, right?
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
family stuff.
Family you choose, family you have.
Yeah.
Quite family.
Yeah.
That's quite nice.
I've
And
seen
a cute dog.
Very
a cute
Of
dog.
course,
We all
yeah.
love a cute dog. I've seen Ralph Innocent. Ralph or Rafe?
Ralph
Innocent.
Isn't he?
Ineson. Oh,
Ineson.
sorry, Ralph. Ralph Ineson's character has been described by fans as confusingly sexy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything confusing
Right.
about him.
Yeah.
He's just sexy. That voice, wow. And the character model's incredible too.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Ralph himself is very sexy. So.
Speaking of sexy kids, can I ask you a question?
Oh,
This is right.
Is this the
Imagine
time
how
and the place?
Awful this is.
is this?
about to
We're not
sound.
past the watershed.
We did a thing where Kez had to do the classic snogging with the mocap camera on your face. How horrible was that?
With the thing hanging.
It was-
Yeah.
You've got this camera like locked on your face like that, pointing back at you.
30
And
seconds
you
away.
you're like so far, and then you have to go like,
It was definitely trial and error. I remember. It was like, was that
Like a
and
first
actually,
kiss.
how do I kiss? I can't even remember how to kiss anymore.
can't believe that people get asked to do that. Respect to you.
The one I really remember was with Wayne Gordon, who's
Yeah.
ex-gladiator Wayne
Oh yeah,
Gordon.
yeah.
as in,
and-
as in the TV show or the
TV
movie?
show.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow,
cool.
the
It was like the
Generation two.
highlight of my whole time on Final Fantasy and being with Gladiator. But he was lovely, and we had to do one. And I remember that we had to do a few takes, one with head cams, and then we put on these lovely little helmets. And we were like, he'd lift me up and put me on the side, and it was definitely using
Was
your
he doing a
imagination.
snug up the wall? Were you?
Well, it was
that-
a bit rough and tumble, you know.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
passionate.
Benedicta,
You probably
that
know
would
this.
have been right.
There we go.
Right outside the...
Hugo and Benedicta.
Yeah.
Outside that meeting room at
Yeah,
the start.
outside the meeting room. Yeah. I was going to say meeting room, then I was like, surely it's something else.
They're at a conference.
Does sound a bit Premier Inn, doesn't it?
Yeah, right outside the meeting room.
They'd exchanged business cards. That's how they knew each other's names. But
Yeah,
it had just been more like an
But like again,
chemistry.
that thing of how game everybody was for all
Yeah.
of that stuff.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
think Neil and Mike had a snog as well
Yes.
as Dion and Terrence. So
Yeah.
it was quite a bit of all of that stuff, and just like, yeah, I will never understand how people are able to do that. Like I respect to you.
Well, I tell you what, putting those suits on, you leave your ego at the door anyway. You just are able to have fun, actually. They do kind of strange things to you. This has actually been the highlight for me so far on this podcast, having you four guys. This has been really, really special, and I've been really fascinated as an actor to hear more about all what you guys do, and especially revisit Final Fantasy XVI has been a lot of fun, and to hear all that was going on when I wasn't there. Brilliant. So thank you very much.